Good night, viewers, and welcome to this another program of Advancing the Cause. This program comes to you every Wednesday night from 18:30 hours to 20 hours. The official host of this program is the Honorable Coretta McDonald, AA, MP, and General Secretary of the Guyana Teachers Union. Because of engagements at a national level, Comrade McDonald would not be here on this program tonight, and therefore I want to tender an apology for her not being on the program tonight. My name is Dennis Jaikran, and I would be hosting this program. As normal, the topic of programs are so informed by the very many viewers of this program. And so tonight's program, the topic is the countdown. And in this topic, we are going to touch on four major areas. We are going to deal with education matters. We are going to deal with matters related to the Ministry of Labor. We are going to deal with matters related to the Ministry of Health. And we are going to deal with the abuse of power at different levels. And so under the Ministry of Education matters, we are going to seek to include matters of the Guyana Teachers Union. And so at this time, let us deal first of all with the Ministry of Education matters, and we now turn our attention to the National Grade 6 Assessment. You know, some time ago, recently, the results of the National Grade 6 Assessment would have been so pampered by the Ministry of Education without recognizing and realizing that the results of these assessments, in the first place, would have been very poor performance. And in the second place, because the Ministry of Education wanted to promote success, that result, or those results rather, would have been skewed to the extent that the Ministry of Education provided an opportunity for misinformation in an effort to say that there was success. Before I get into that, let this program offer its sincere congratulations and best wishes to all those learners who would have received their results based on their performance at this assessment. This program wishes them well as they proceed to whichever secondary school they were awarded. Before I deal with the results, the skewed results from the Ministry of Education, let me explain something about the National Grade 6 assessment. First of all, it is what it says at the last. Assessment, an assessment. And so I want to get that out of the way to say it is not an examination. It is an assessment. Viewers, I want to apologize to you for that interruption that would have been deliberate. And every time this program or any other program would have seek to bring you the information and to bring you the facts thereof, they seek to interrupt these programs. But we are at a point as it relates to the National Grade 6 assessment. And I made the point it is not an examination, but an assessment. And I want to get it clear because it would appear that very many, including the chief education officer and the Minister of Education and some of these redos, including the one in Region 10 and 2 and 6, cannot differentiate between what is an examination and assessment. So let me say in this program that the National Grade 6 assessment, it is a norm reference assessment. It is not a criteria assessment thereof. And so what it means by the norm, each year, depending on the performance of those who would have been presented for the assessment, and based on the scores they would have achieved, it would allow them to be able to be placed or awarded at schools, either secondary, junior secondary, or senior secondary, based on their performance. So the point is that the National Grade 6 assessment, not examination as the CEO, the minister, and these redos would want to believe. And it is not a criteria reference assessment. It is a norm reference, meaning the scores are there based on the performance of the learners or those who would have been presented for this assessment in any particular year. Their performance will determine their award to a secondary school based on scores. So Minister of Education, CEO, redos, some of you need to know that. And some of you already as redos, and some of the DOs that are responsible for, and this is not casting any blame on them, because they do not know that don't go and say to schools and graduation exercises as some of you would have done, that they would have passed. They would not have. There was nothing like pass or fail. It is an award exam assessment. Redos, mind you, some of you were pitchforked into those positions last December. And some of you thought it fit that you should be endorsing. And some of you did endorse because it is payback. You have to now do what you are doing because you were appointed based on favoritism, friendism, and not being adequately qualified or experienced. And so because of that, like the chief education officer, you are assisting in making a mess of the education system in this country. But let us go quickly as it relates to what the Ministry of Education would have put out. This is the first thing. In their assessment, they would have failed tremendously to give the total number of persons that would have been presented for the National Grade 6 assessment. And what they did, they put here by regions. And they put Region 11, which is an indictment, a shame and a disgrace. There is no 11 regions in this country. There are 10 education districts, and Georgetown is referred to as an education district. So when you go, you say 1 to 10. When you reach at number 11, it is not Region 11. It is Georgetown that is managed by a principal education officer, Georgetown. This is the education system we are dealing with. And so that is their mistake because they don't know. They didn't give you a total as it relates to the number, but I give you the total. 15,588 learners would have been presented for the National Grade 6 assessment. And then they were bold enough to give you the numbers, not the percentage. And it says here, Ministry of Education, NGSA 2025, 50% at overpass rate by region. It is by regions. These people are making silly mistakes and embarrassing the education system continuously. And so, as I said, 15,588 learners would have been presented for the National Grade 6 assessment. Of those in mathematics, 8,529 would have received 50% and more in that assessment. And that would result in a 55% performance in mathematics. As it relates to English, of the 15,588, 10,642 would have been awarded 50% and more as it relates to that assessment. And so that 10,642, the overall performance in English would be 68%. As it relates to science, of the 15,588 learners, 9,782 would have been assessed and awarded 50% and more. And so that overall for science would give you a 63% performance. And as it relates to social studies, of the 15,588 learners presented for this assessment, 9,951 would have been awarded a score of 50% and above. An overall performance in social studies of 64%. So the question is, why is it the Ministry of Education in being very bold at that time to present these scores did not give the public the percentage performance in mathematics, English, social studies, and science? They kept that out of the way because of poor performance. And this has nothing to do with our teachers that are teaching these children. It has to do with our teachers not being motivated to work. And where that motivation comes from? The failure of the Ministry of Education to pay our teachers the rightful wages and salaries, and the other things that are non-salary, so to speak, for them to benefit from. The second point I want to make as it relates to these results, it is not the school system by itself that is responsible. It is because of the many extra lessons that would have been provided to these learners during that period leading up to the assessment. And you know, the Ministry of Education would have provided and would have invested, as they say and boast about, millions of dollars to provide learning and teaching materials. But that was a business for the Ministry of Education, because that association that might be there, or that would have been there, so to speak, would have provided an opportunity for grabbing of funds that should have been poured in to the system to provide teaching and learning materials for our teachers so that they could have enhanced learning and enhance and provide an opportunity for better results. And when you boast about results, none of which would have been 70%, none of the scores there, then the results are very poor. And so when you celebrate a 1%, you are doing damage to those who are not able to. And it is not because of their fault. It is because of the Ministry of Education not satisfying not only our teachers, but in providing in the necessary teaching and learning materials. Technically, and as an overall, you can conclude that based on these results and assessment, as put out by the Ministry of Education, bold to say, NGSA 2025, 50% and above pass rate by region. It is a very poor performance. But because it is a norm reference assessment, a 1% that would go to the senior secondary school, which most time would have been considered Queen's College, would still be there with lower levels of performance and scores. And if by chance the CEO and a team of all his DCOs and all the ACOs and those he would want to bring, this program that is hosted tonight by this person can challenge that team in any debate to say to them that the performance would have been very poor. And that is not to blame our students, our learners, not to blame our teachers, but the system is to be blamed about that. So I want to get that out of the way as it relates to that. The second issue I want to deal with as it relates to education is this total disrespect of the Redo Region 2 and the DU nursery. There are certain set conditions as it relates to the closing of school. And whether you are on any leave or not, the protocol is, the convention is that on the last day of any closing of school, the last day, that the head teacher must be in school. There is a particular nursery school in South Essequibo where this head teacher would have been in total defiance of many, many things. And there is a blind eye by the DO nursery and the Redo. This head teacher, it is alleged, would have been granted permission to leave the country, was out of the country allegedly for 3 weeks, was not in school on the last day, the closing of school for the academic year. And so the Redo and the DEO nursery must tell taxpayers of this country why there was that infraction. But you know, the story is told that on the return of this head teacher to this country, allegedly a visit was made, and both the Redo and the DEO nursery were awarded for making a known mistake. CEO, you need to investigate this matter because it is in defiance of the convention's rules and regulations. And the teachers of this particular nursery school would have allowed this program to get this information. And mind you, this program informed you, as we want to remind you, that it was this same head teacher, while a student at CPC at the Anna Regina Center, would have been caught cheating at that examination, the final examination, but the matter was closed and covered up. The public must know these things. And it was this same head teacher, allegedly, that was caught shoplifting in 2 supermarkets in this region. And these are the head teachers you have in the system. There are allegations that once this head teacher was out of this country, and once this head teacher would have been at any function, and they were persons of influence as it relates to finance, there was this soliciting on behalf of the school But nothing of the sort was put into the school. It was made personal to this head teacher. This is an indictment. This is a serious indictment. And this can only be encouraged because the REDO is very poor in the management of this system in this region. You know, there are allegations that a sibling of this same head teacher with very poor grades at CSEC, and where other persons would have applied allegations for teaching, having far better grades than the sibling of this head teacher. And allegations that in some cases there might be a commissioner on the Teachers Service Commission that might be part and parcel of this arrangement, would have caused a person who would have not been so qualified as others to become a teacher at the same school that this head teacher is attached. But mind you, this same program reminded you some time ago, meaning when CSEC was being written the last time, this same person allegedly that is now a teacher, the sibling of this head teacher that was caught cheating at CPC, this person, student then, would have been caught cheating at CSEC, and the matter was covered up at the level of the administration of the school, that this student was presented for CSEC because both the head teacher and the deputy head teacher would have been appointed administratively by the school board without due process. All these things are total infringement. And I told you this program rather said to you of the story of the legally appointed head teacher of that school that would have been forced out of her job because of the regional education officer still here in this region, appointed in December, political appointment. And so these are the things that are happening in the education system, allowing and causing certain. So it is time, based on all these infringement, for this program to now call out the Regional Executive Officer, Region 2, the Chief Education Officer, the Deputy Chief Education Officer, Administration, the Assistant Chief Education Officer, Nursery, the Auditor General, because some of these things that the program brought to you just now, defiance of an infringement on the part of this head teacher, there's need for investigation. But you know, the Office of the Auditor General would have been so proactive during the period of the coalition and is now so relaxed during this period. And you see nothing coming out of the Office of the Auditor General that is significant. But this program would continue to call out all those who are paid by the state, the taxpayers of this country, and are failing to perform. Redo, you need to, Redo Region 2, you need to answer to the public because you are paid by the public. You are paid by taxpayers. You are paid by the state. Why is it you did what you did as it relates to providing that opportunity for that head teacher of Deep South Esquimalt, nursery school teacher, head teacher, to have been out of the country for 3 weeks, including the last week, the last day of the closing of school for the academic year 2024 2025. And so, those who have work to do, ensure that you do your work. I would want to believe that our operators might have a clip to justify what I'm saying. And so when the Redo was bold enough to make these announcements, as when she endorsed for a second term President Irfan Ali, and when she was bold enough to make some wrong statements and performance of our learners at the National Grade 6 assessment, and because of our poor management of this region, a student at a particular secondary school suffered a stab in the back. The evidence is there. The evidence is there at a particular secondary school. After C-sec on one day, that the student was in a terrible state in the backlands where this particular secondary school is located. This is the Redo that was pitchforked and politically appointed in this region, making a mess of this region. This program would want to wish that student, that learner that would have been stabbed in the back, a speedy recovery, and trust that all is well with that student. The next point is the gold scholarship. Let this program make it known from the very beginning that the gold scholarship is a farce and fake. And it was there to provide an opportunity to both reward and award failures. And why this is said? It is said because many of those in the public service that were employed at the particular time would have been placed there because of their relationship with some person, organization, or agency, but were not qualified, meaning that they did not have mathematics and English as required for employment in the public service at grades 1 to 3. But because of their attachment, they were employed and spent many years still in the service and not been able to achieve any pass at mathematics and English, but were awarded scholarships, the gold scholarships, to do degree, diplomas, and certificate program. If this is not a fake program, a farce, so to speak, tell us on this program. How is it? Failures are being awarded and rewarded. This is shameful. and the qualified persons do not have an opportunity to do it. But let me make another point as it relates to the gold scholarship. As some people are celebrating elsewhere, even in churches and at Thanksgiving meetings and at weddings and funerals, when they are given an opportunity to preach, give this impression that scholarships are given. But let me say to persons who believe in that, yes, scholarships are given, but it is not free as they would want us to believe. It is paid for by the state, the taxpayers, the people of this country. And so when you go and you say these things, that scholarships are free, you do not know a system, but you are bold enough to give wrong information, misleading information, because of your wicked thoughts and deeds, wanting to promote irregularities, inefficiencies, and illegalities. So the point is, one, that the gold scholarship is a fake and farce. The second point is that the gold scholarship provides an opportunity to reward and award failures. And the third point is that all scholarships are paid for by taxpayers and the state. And so don't go about and give the impression that these gold scholarships are free. They are not. The taxpayers of this country feel the squeeze, so to speak. Let us turn to some GTU matters. But before we deal with the matters of GTU, this program would wish to offer its sincere congratulations and best wishes to all those officers who were elected at the recently concluded elections of the Guyana Teachers Union at the level of officers or the executive level. Sincere congratulations and best wishes. This program is of the belief that at this stage, that the right set of persons are now elected to lead the union. And so teachers that are out there and that are listening, this program is appealing to you to give this new executive the necessary support. This program was reliably informed that during the process leading up to the elections, that some contestants had the opportunity to be funded by the PPP, allegedly, so that they can be able to hold positions. But in a very sorry state, the teachers recognized differently and they voted for whom they wanted. There are allegations also that in Region 2, Region 3, Region 5, 6, and 10, allegations, mind you, that the Redos in these regions were part and parcel of a team that wanted to allow certain persons to be elected, but like the funded persons, there was this disappointment. Redos Let the teachers do their business. You are not supposed to interfere or intervene in the GTU matters and elections. You are already failing our teachers and the system. Now that this executive would have been elected, teachers would have indicated onto this program, and all out there is this expectation that there be a smooth, a transparent, and honest and sincere handing over, I repeat, handing over of all records, assets, every single thing, including, most importantly, the financial records and the funds therein that belong to the Guyana Teachers Union. So the outgoing executive, the advice to you, as our teachers would want, that you do the sincere handing over of assets, records, documents, and more particularly, the financial aspect of the handing over, taking over of this. But let me say that it is the strongest view, and I repeat the word, the words rather, the strongest view of our teachers of this country, that the best person is now the president of the Guyana Teachers Union, in the person of the Honorable Coretta McDonald, AAMP, who would have been now the president-elect of the Guyana Teachers Union. But on the other hand, there is something that is very frightening. And I want to very quickly go through with you a document that would provide an opportunity for the public to know that the Guyana Teachers Union this union continues to suffer at the hands of the government of Guyana and the Ministry of Education. So there was, on the 3rd of July of this year, 2025, because it is short, I'm going to quickly read it to you to show you the indictment on the part of the Ministry of Education and the Guyana Teachers Union. Statement from the Guyana Teachers Union: continued non-reinstatement of automatic deductions for union members. The Guyana Teachers Union expresses its deep displeasure and concern regarding the ongoing refusal by the government of Guyana to reinstate automatic deductions for union dues. Point number one. Point number two, this matter has been conclusively addressed in both the High Court and the Court of Appeal of Guyana, with rulings clearly in favor of the Guyana Teachers Union. Despite this, the Ministry of Education has always failed to comply with the court's decision. Following these rulings, judgment documents were officially served on the Attorney General, the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Education, the regional executive officers, and all other relevant authorities. Yet, no action has been taken to correct this situation. The union has also written formally to both the Chief Education Officer and the Permanent Secretary to urge immediate compliance. Additionally, the GTU has engaged the Ministry of Labor on this matter, highlighting the urgency and seriousness of this issue. The union sees this continued inaction as a blatant disregard for the authority of two of the highest courts in this country. It also reflects a serious level of disrespect toward the legal system of Guyana and the rule of law. The GTU calls on the government and the Ministry of Education to act immediately and to reinstate the automatic deductions in full compliance of the court's ruling. The union remains committed to defending the rights of its members and upholding justice within the education. This is straightforward. And why the Ministry of Education is doing this is because of that agreement that was made in bad faith by the, well, I can say the past because they are really past members. They made a mess of the union and the bargaining system for their own personal gains because some were appointed administratively. Some are head teachers and were still being appointed or given an authority as inspectors of school in the various regions. Some were promised positions as director of NSWORD. Some would have been, as I said, appointed administratively without due process. And so those are some of the persons in the system that were part of the Guyana Teachers Union that failed our teachers. Teachers, please ensure that at the time of taking over of this union to the new executive, that there's an audited financial statement. And so that our new treasurer of the Guyana Teachers Union would be taken over in clear. The president would be taken over in clear. Well, I know the general secretary is now president, so that is going to be a smooth takeover. We need to get more involved in this thing because if this handed over is not honest and sincere, then it calls for action to be taken to stop allow our teachers. So Ministry of Education ensured PS, CEO, there is, and CEO, you missed it by a particular judge in the High Court when you misled the court. And you should have been sanctioned then. And whatever would have been the necessary action that a judge is empowered to take. This program strongly believes that a judge should have taken that action to ensure that you learn and that you adhere to the rule of law. And so, again, congratulations to the new executive. Let us turn now to the Ministry of Labor. You see, this country is of such. There are three things I want to talk about the Ministry of Labor. Four things rather. The first thing is that this ministry is headed by a headless person in the person of the Minister of Labor, Joe Hamilton, I think is his name. A political grasshopper. He moved from one place to another place to another place to another place. Can't stick. I make that point to indicate to you, and these are not allegations, it is out there, that the chief labor officer, who is a misfit, real misfit for that position, is now performing the duties as permanent secretary, deputy permanent secretary, and performing the duties as chief labor officer, his substantive appointment. Is it that the other persons are not fit to perform such duties in the Ministry of Labor? Or is it that those persons who are adequately qualified and experienced in that ministry or any other ministry, because of who they might be, are not there to be appointed? This is an indictment, and viewers must know this, that the chief labor officer is performing the duties in a substantive position as chief labor officer, permanent secretary, and deputy. Indictment on the part of the public service. And sometimes you wonder, where is the Guyana Public Service Union as it relates to some of these matters? How strong are they to represent their members? But that is another story that I'm going to talk about, because members of the Guyana Public Service Union would have been reaching out to this program, making some serious allegations and expressing some serious concerns. The second point about the Ministry of Labor, that these officers that are appointed as labor officers, as occupational health and safety officers, are very poor in their performance. If they are not, then they are taking sides allegedly. An important thing where that ministry is so reactive is when you have workplace incidents and accidents. They ought to be proactive, the occupational health and safety officers. And they are allowing agencies and other functionaries to so break and not comply with the Occupational Health and Safety Act rules and regulations therein. You go to some of these workplaces, right near to these offices where these occupational health and safety officers are, you find persons working without personal protective gears. There are no signage, so to speak. And all these things, they are defective electrical connections and what have you, all danger not only to persons and life, but danger to public buildings, private buildings, and individuals. And they sit back receiving taxpayers' money, money from the state, and are not performing their duties. And the third point I want to make as it relates to the Ministry of Labor is this level of discrimination as it relates to the Board of Industrial Training, providing training in selected areas for only certain persons. And in some of these regions, the Board of Industrial Training is highly political, so to speak. And so training is provided for one set of people. And the other set, young people would continue to suffer because of the discrimination meted out to our young people as it relates to selection for training. And so this situation, there is need for the necessary corrections to be made. Let us deal a little bit now on the issues of the Ministry of Health. The Ministry of Health, like the Ministry of Labor, like the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development, like the Ministry of Education, there is total confusion in all of these ministries. Supervision and management is at its lowest at every level in the Ministry of Health. And so let me speak to situations as it relates to Region 2. You know, when someone would have retired from public service, there's another young person in the system that should be given an opportunity to serve. But there's a position called the hospital administrator at public hospital study. The person who held that office retired some time ago. And because of her political affiliation, I repeat, her political affiliation would have been re-employed as a retired person. And the persons below that HA, hospital administrator, and mind you, the hospital administrator is a person not adequately qualified, but was appointed before 2015 because of political affiliation and very poor in performance, but would have been given an opportunity after retirement some 1 or 2 years ago, is doing a very poor job. And the young persons that are there that should have been rather given an opportunity to serve, whether acting in that position, are complaining bitterly because they were denied that opportunity. And so there is that level. So if one would have moved up, the other would have moved up, the other would have moved up. So everybody would have a clear and equal opportunity to climb that ladder of success. But this poorly retired person and inadequately qualified is there taking up that position. You know, there are allegations that a certain public servant, retired person at public hospital study who lives or resides in Region 3 was use the office that a person holds to force and to send employees at the home of this person to do work on the weekend using the facilities of public hospital study. And they are complaining bitterly of this situation. There are allegations that this same person, public servant, retired, and there again, are using the resources of public hospital study and at times sending these resources and facilities to the home in Region 3 where this person resides, allegations. And so the persons who are transporting these things are very much afraid, but they are told in no uncertain term that they have to do it. And they are complaining because they are very much fearful that one day they would be caught and they would be in the situation of being troubled. This is a situation for the Auditor General, the REO of this region, the Regional Health Officer, to find out. Because these are all allegations. And it is a serious invite. The next point I want to make that the Oscar Joseph Hospital at Charity, there are serious problems and indictments. It is told, and we very well believe that an office assistant would have been pitchforked from the regional administration to Oscar Joseph Hospital to perform duties as an accounts clerk and overall duties to give supervisory instructions to staff. And there's massive confusion because this person is not even qualified to be an office assistant, but would have been pitchforked to that level. And persons are resigning at that complex, Oscar Joseph Cottage Hospital. People are asking for transfer. People are moving from there to other institution because of this one person doing all these things. And there's a blind eye turn on this person. And so it is also alleged that there are a number of missing items that cannot be accounted for at this complex, the Oscar Joseph Cottage Hospital, and no one is paying attention. The doctors and the nurses at that hospital, some of the employees are complaining bitterly of these situations, and no one is taking them seriously. There are allegations that another public servant would have been moved from public hospital, to Oscar Joseph Hospital, given certain priorities, a vehicle, so to speak, a driver, so to speak, reports for duty at 10 every day, leaves at 2, and is not at any time complaints from the public, not properly dressed, and does not know how to speak to persons. And in some cases, members of the public would have told this program that they do not know whether this public servant is looking at them or in any other direction. And so they are concerned about that. These are matters at this stage for the regional health officer, the regional executive officer, the permanent secretary, Ministry of Health. And because of these items allegedly that cannot be accounted for, the Office of the Auditor General, and because these workers who might be members of the Guyana Public Service Union are being discriminated allegedly by this office assistant that would have been placed here as general clerk or accounts clerk, discriminating, handling people, being disrespectful to staff, causing staff members to walk off the job, to go to private institutions, to resign. All these things are happening at Oscar Joseph Hospital, but no one is paying attention. And so these are matters of concern. And so it is time for some action to be taken as it relates to what is happening at the Oscar Joseph Hospital, where certain public servants are being discriminated against, and nobody calling at this stage out the Auditor General, calling out the RHO, the REXO, and the Guyana Public Service Union because your members are affected. Now, I want to turn to a situation that there's a big label at the new hospital that is constructed. Let me tell you some stories about that. Stories. One, when that project would have been conceived and plans and arrangements would have been made under the coalition government during 2015 and 20. Mind you, let me repeat, when those arrangements were made for the construction of this hospital in Region 2 and other places, Region 3, because I'm fortunate to know this, because I was regional executive officer in both Region 2 and 3, and when these plans were there, I was part of it. And so the first thing there, that the location in which this hospital is now being there, that they call Lima, I'm going to come to deal with that. That was not the location. The location was under Nimin. So let me make that point. The second point I want to make, that when the PPP came into government in 2020, there was this quick arrangement with this businessman to give a small plot of land in Coffee Grove. Viewers, do you hear that name? Coffee Grove. For the construction of this hospital. Mind you, the place on the naming that was proposed, it is a government place. But you are able to barter and bargain with this businessman for a small plot of land for 20 or 40 times greater in size in prime locations in Region 4. Let me repeat that this government bargained for the exchange of a very small plot of land where the hospital is now located by a businessman who would have been awarded 20 to 30 times, 40 times more land space in region, prime land space in Region 4. So are we, in this program, we are giving you the sequence of infractions and indictments. The next point I want to make, and I'm going to make that comparison with schools so that persons can understand. If you have a school being gazetted in a particular location, let me give you a few schools. Aurora Secondary School, when it was gazetted, the location was Aurora, located there. Hampton Court Primary School would have been in Hampton Court proper, where the church, the Anglican Church, owned that plot of land. When that school was constructed, in its new location, it was at Devonshire Castle. And so the name of the school, despite the fact relocation, the name of the school remained Hampton Court Primary. The name of Aurora Secondary, while the school was built or constructed in Pomona, remained Aurora Secondary School. The point I want to make is that there was never a hospital named Lima Regional Hospital. So if the hospital is constructed in Coffee Grove, it is so unwise, so stupid to speak, to name it Lima Regional Hospital. How confusing it is. How far-fetched is it from reality? And so this program would want to say that the same thing is happening in the different regions of this country. And so we made 3 points, this program. One is that when this project, rather 4 points, when this project was conceived, it was conceived during the period of the coalition. Point number 2, the location of this hospital, the land or the location would have been on the Nimin. The third point is that when this government came into being, they bargained for an exchange of land, and where the hospital is, they give to allegedly a businessman 40 times greater the size of the land that the hospital is on in prime places in Region 4. The fourth point rather, is that the name is so, it is difficult to use some words on this program. It is so irregular, so to speak. To name a hospital Lima Regional Hospital when it is located in Coffee Grove, and when there was no such hospital, as I made mention of and give examples of the 2 schools. If there was a hospital in Lima and you relocated that hospital in Coffee Grove, then the name would remain the same because it would go with its same name. There was no such hospital in Lima, so there's massive confusion. So this program wants to make it known. Let us turn our attention to abuse of power. And you know, this program would have always, for the many weeks and months, speaking of this illegal and unauthorized mechanical workshop operating in a residential area, causing noise, dust, and chemical pollution. And the rightful authority, the Environmental Protection Agency, a failed agency, an agency where the employees are paid by the state and by taxpayers of this money, and apparently receiving salaries on the false pretense without performing duties as paid for. They are failing not only in this case, but I want to say that this program would have been reliably informed that across regions of this country, that the cries of people are on the Environmental Protection Agency for failing to adhering to the rules and regulations as it relates to protecting people based on the Environmental Protection Agency Act. This program is going to be very, very vocal. And this program might once be able to have persons come from different regions to speak of the discrimination of the environmental protection agents. So that is one power of abuse. The second power of abuse is that, you know, I once upon a time served as regional executive officer, Region 3. And during the time of the coalition, there was a certain businessman who some time ago, it is alleged, said that he provided security and providing guns and ammunition to the PPP. But let me tell you the story that there was a plot of land at Zila. And one afternoon, when some residents of that region thought it fit to go and clear plots of land on that location, they were met with great resistance from the alleged owner. And I want to make the point quickly because we have 5 minutes more on this program. You know what was said to those persons? While the coalition, if the PPP was in government, all of you would have been killed and shot. You see what is happening? And so one of the political aspirants of this country, the presidential aspirant, so to speak, we need to let the people know that the father of a particular political aspirant was the person who said those words to the persons that were clearing those lands and needed land then to do construct. The land is still there, lying wasted. But because of greed and power, our people would have suffered at the hands of this particular business. These stories must be told. And if they are not told, we would not know. Recently, last week, there's a video, and we have it on this program. The operators have it, or we might not have time to show it. But right in Anna Regina, members of the Guyana Fire Service would have been seen at the Anna Regina High Bridge with their vehicles climbing up, taking down the national flag, our national flag, and putting up the PPP flag. There are further allegations that members of the Guyana Fire Service and some members of the Guyana Defense Force that are based in Anna Regina were the persons who were instructed to ensure that Anna Regina cotton field area, from the area where the station is located to where these businessmen are taking over the pavement, just opposite the bank, the Republic Bank, 4 or 5 businessmen, power at hand. These personnel from the Guyana Defense Force and the Fire Service, there is evidence of members of the Guyana Fire Service placing PPP flags in the Anna Regina area. But it is not to their advantage because they are complaining bitterly. And when they complain, they are told and instructed and said to that once you speak and you do not carry out the functions as instructed by, you would be transferred, or you would be stripped of your rank, or you may be dismissed. So this program is not casting blame on members of the Guyana Fire Service and the members of the Guyana Defense Force who were forced to do that. But this program is bringing it out to show the power of abuse at this time that we refer to as the silly season. And the members or the employees of the Anna Regina Town Council would have been forced to do likewise beyond their wishes, and they are complaining bitterly. But when they complain, the allegation is that the mayor of the town of Anna Regina, a full paid employed by the state and taxpayers, he's been paid as a lecturer of the Essequibo Technical Institute. And by some accident, he is there seconded or something, but the paperwork would be seen sometime. Receiving full salaries as a lecturer at the Essequibo Technical Institute, not performing any duties there, and still receiving a stipend from the Ministry of Local Government and Regional Development. And the allegation is that he's threatening these employees for dismissal if they do not comply, meaning that if they do not seek to mount these flags of the PPP in this region. And so this program is very much concerned about all these things that are happening. And people are concerned and they are very much troubled of these things. But as the program, the topic tonight is a countdown. The time would come when this program, because of the content as guided by the viewers and members of the public, teachers, public servants, members of the disciplinary services, when we speak about your involvement in anything, we very well understand that you are forced to do these things, but your loyalty is not there where you are forced to do it. Allow your loyalty to remain where it belongs. And so that come the 1st of September, ensure you do what is right based on where your loyalty lies. Viewers, I think we would have had, I want to talk something about the police, but this program is clear. Some of these policemen that are very, very, very upsetting, so to speak, because they carry out the work of the PPP. Only some of them we have. But I got to talk about them on the next program. So viewers, I want to thank you very much for ensuring that you were part of this program tonight. We want to thank you very much. We want to wish you well, and we want to wish you a good night. Thank you very much, and may God bless you and keep you well.